welcome everybody to this first official seminar, webinar of Jim and my Applied Kinesiology. This will be an introduction presentation. This will go over a lot of the basic information that we think is sort of irrelevant to teach in a class, because we want to get right to the point of showing you stuff so that Monday morning you can start applying these skills. So as I'm recording this, you'll probably hear some beeps, some phone calls, or the phone ringing, so please just disregard it. I've tried to record this multiple times in a still environment, but unfortunately it has to occur at the practice, and it's busy, and so there's going to be lots of noises. But I'll try and get through this as quickly as possible so that you can get on with your days and start really appreciating where we're going to go with this. This presentation that I'll be doing now is really supposed to be 4 hours, but I'm going to try and do this in under an hour. And it's really, there's no reason to present this in 4 hours, because it's very basic information and it gives you the basic foundations to understand where we're going with this. So again, this is a course developed by Jim Townhill and myself. We're both diplomats with the International College of Applied Kinesiology. And I just wanted to make this brief statement that the following is an original compilation of applied kinesiology works, theory, hypothesis, and practical applications. The material has been compiled from a broad range of references, texts, papers, and original writings of some of the greatest teachers, researchers, innovative thinkers of the last century. Due recognition and our eternal thanks goes first to Dr. George Goodhart for his discovery and his life work and inspiration, which changed not only our lives, but that of thousands of others. Also, thanks to the many other diplomats and doctors, too numerous here to mention, that provided us the basis and original ideas that we have broadened our AK knowledge, and that was necessary to create this work. So there's just too many to thank and to mention, but as the course goes on, over the next 6 months, we'll certainly mention when it's appropriate the people that have influenced us in decisions on why we do the things we do. So you'll start to learn and hear more about different diplomats and different people within applied kinesiology that have given us sort of the insight. I think this is a great place to start off with. This comes from a diplomat within the International College of Applied Kinesiology, Dr. Eugene Charles, who's a chiropractor in New York. He says that love of the procedure is the tool of the technician, and that love of the patient is the tool of the physician. And I think this really defines what we do as applied kinesiologists. That manual muscle testing is a tool, and it is a very effective tool. And through the use of that tool and that gratitude of how we can really effectively identify problems, you really start to love your patients, because you know you can help them, and as a result, you become a very effective and efficient physician. So the foundation for all this, for both Jim and I, is we want to provide optimum health care for our patients. And so what does this mean? What do we mean by optimal health care? And this is what I've sort of defined it as, is that one, we want to find the cause of the patient's problem. And we want to do something to the patient that induces rapid recovery. And not only does it reduce rapid recovery, that it gives lasting correction. And as a result of that, it will develop lifelong referrals by that patient. It's more effective use of your time, and you end up giving more than you'll ever get, which is really, I think, a good foundation for life. Always give more than you receive. And this is how I work and operate, and this is what develops my thoughts. And applied kinesiology, manual muscle testing, allows you to do those first three things very, very well, and we'll teach you how to do that. So the goal for today is I want to discuss major concepts and methods of applied kinesiology. I want to define what the Triad of Health is, give you a little history about the International College of Applied Kinesiology. I want to talk about the 5 factors of the intervertebral foramen, which is the basis of which applied kinesiology is built out of. And then I want to talk in the last part and give you a little bit of information on muscle facilitation and inhibition, and then we'll finish with some videos to give you really an introduction into what we're going to do, and then that will be a good foundation to start with the first seminar, and you'll be really well prepared to really just dig in and really understand this stuff. So what is applied kinesiology? Well, definition-wise, it can be defined as the clinical application of the study of movement and function. Functional neurology is really the basis of applied kinesiology, and it's also a diagnostic tool of the body's central integrative state through the detection of direct or reflex manifestations within the structure or function of the muscular system, and that is through manual muscle testing. It is a continually evolving system that provides the doctor with the skills and knowledge to purposely, systematically, and logically ascertain the optimal treatment of the patient. Every year it just gets broader and broader as different people redefine and find different ways and more effective ways to treat the patient. But at the basis, the manual muscle testing always remains at the core. Applied kinesiology embraces the work of all individuals and disciplines who endeavor to diminish the suffering of humanity. And just like you'll see in this room, I mean, this room is, on the first seminar, you'll see is filled with chiropractors, osteopaths, naturopaths, nutrition counselors. I mean, we're all here to help our patients, and applied kinesiology allows us to integrate all sources of individuals and disciplines to give our patient the best chance of healing. And applied kinesiology also attempts to unify our knowledge and techniques into a usable, provable scientific system. It's designed to provide you with a basic method to examine functional neurology. So manual muscle testing at its basis, all you're doing is you're evaluating how the functional neurology is of the body. Basic treatments you can use now, or that you have used over the last couple of years, you can still use, but now that you have manual muscle testing, you can get much more effective and efficient at using it. And it also allows you to better understand why health problems develop and provide better directions for proper therapy. You know, no longer do you have to guess or think that this is the appropriate supplement. Now you can know that it is the appropriate supplement, and you can understand why people don't respond in the ways that they do. It's a system that evaluates and analyzes structural, biochemical, and emotional balance in the body. And this I'll talk about a little bit more in a little bit about the Triad of Health, and that the basis is of these three things. The main diagnostic tool is the manual muscle test, and so we'll talk about that everything that we do requires us to know and understand how to properly manual muscle test. And we can use that tool to decide what nutrition we need to give, what adjustments we need to give, what exercises we need to give, and what acupuncture points we need to stimulate. It's a very effective tool at identifying what's the most appropriate thing today. And at that, it's mainly a diagnostic system. So regardless of what you have heard or understand, all it is a diagnostic system. It is not a chiropractic technique per se. It's just a way to evaluate the body. You can keep your technique, your osteopathic technique, your naturopathy technique, your chiropractic technique, but you just throw in this tool. And this tool becomes effective at allowing you to use your technique better. You can use all sorts of different treatment modalities with better precision. And it's really the most important thing to understand is that it's not an evaluation of strength or weakness, although we do refer to it as that. We'll say, oh, that muscle's weak or that muscle's strong. But it's not about that. It's about the neurological response of the muscle to stretch. And so we're asking the nervous system a question. And we want to find out if it's compromised in that communication or not. And as a result, you'll see that the muscle either responds to that stretch or it doesn't respond. And when it doesn't respond, that's an indication that there's a problem, and you need to search out where that problem is. The overall goal with what we're doing, or what we're doing in using the manual muscle test, is to decrease cumulative noxious stimuli below threshold, thus allowing the body to heal itself. And there's a concept called robustness. And when you reduce that threshold and the body becomes stronger, it becomes more robust and is able to respond to external forces in a much more efficient and better way. It brings your patients to a higher level of health, and it helps them actualize their potential. So quite often you'll hear us talk about patients where, they came in with a particular condition, but the results after we started treating them is that they regain their life back. It goes much more beyond the symptoms themselves. So applied kinesiology is really it's an international college of applied kinesiologists, and this college per se was founded in 1975. It includes members from a variety of specialties, including chiropractors, osteopaths, medical doctors, dentists, physiotherapists, manual therapists. Anybody that has been trained within a sort of a doctor, physiotherapist type of training is eligible to become a member of this college. And every year the college puts together a theory and practical-based exam after the courses, which is called the clinical competence test. You guys will be able to do this at the end of the fourth seminar, and then you will receive a certificate that you're clinically competent to practice applied kinesiology. And within that international college, there's sub-chapters that within varying countries, and they all hold annual meetings. And the annual meetings provide an opportunity to update members with regard to research activities and anecdotal thoughts from its members. So currently here in the Netherlands, we just recently had our annual general meeting. It was in March in Antwerp, and we belong to the ICAK Benelux area, so that encompasses Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg. And those members belong to ICAK Benelux, and we hold our annual general meeting every year in Antwerp. And this year, Jim and I had the pleasure of being two of the three speakers. The third speaker was Mariella Allwaters, and she is a dentist in Belgium that practices applied kinesiology. So we've got all sorts of different chapters within the United States, Australia, Austria, Benelux, which we are, Brazil, Canada. So they're all over the world. They're not in every country, but there's certain countries that Germany is a great example where they have a lot of medical doctors and dentists that belong to the association. Russia and Brazil and South Korea now have really grown their membership and have really embraced the concepts of the manual muscle test, and so we've seen a lot of great research coming out of those areas. Jim and I are a diplomat, so what that entails is that we have done 300 hours of graduate study within applied kinesiology taught by two different diplomats. We've submitted 2 original papers to be published. We've been in practice for a minimum of 3 years, and then we went, both Jim and I flew to England, to Oxford, to do 5 100-question written exams on the topics that you'll be learning within the next 4 weekends. And then we did a practical exam, and based on that, if you passed 75%, then you're awarded diplomat status, which you get a nice certificate, and it allows you to then continue on and apply to become a teaching diplomat, which Jim and I went on to do, and so now we're considered teaching diplomats within the International College of Applied Kinesiology. So what you're going to learn? You're going to learn that the functional interaction of the body systems, how they interrelate with each other. You'll learn how to properly manual muscle test. You'll learn postural analysis. You'll learn how to detect and correct subluxations, which is what chiropractors and osteopaths do. You'll learn a variety of different psychomotor skills that allow you to better evaluate the patient. You'll learn how to evaluate gait analysis and what that means and where you can look for problems. You'll learn all about acupuncture and meridian therapies. You'll learn how to functionally challenge for the appropriate nutrition for the patient, and you'll learn different somatovisceral and visceral somatic relationships, and you'll learn how to communicate better with your patient, and best of all is you'll learn how to have fun in practice, and this is a big one for me, is that as soon as I really started to embrace the concept of muscle testing, I just love practice. I never have a bad day. It's always fun, and I'm always absolutely surprised about the outcomes of what happens. So how can we use this? How can we use applied kinesiology? It can be used to improve the diagnosis of structural problems, biochemical problems, and emotional problems. You can locate the optimal technique or location that needs treatment, and after treatment, you have now a tool that is a great way to analyze what effects the treatment had on the patient and what kind of prognosis you can give to that patient. You can really use manual muscle testing, aka to look at muscular problems, neurological, vascular, osseous, lymphatic, respiratory, digestive, endocrine, muscle massage techniques. I mean, by the time you understand how a muscle functions, you're going to become the best muscle manipulator, massager in your area, because you have the exact tool to learn what that muscle needs at that time. And yeah, nutritional supplements, I mean, just knowing exactly what that person needs at that time exactly is so powerful. This is one of my favorite quotes. The universe is not to be narrowed down to the limits of our understanding, but our understanding must be stretched and enlarged to take in the image of the universe as it is discovered. This was written by Francis Bacon. And I think it explains a lot of what applied kinesiology is because there's a lot of misunderstood concepts and misunderstood techniques within it. And all I ask you to do over the next 4 weekends is just open your mind. Allow us to teach you. Allow yourself to be stretched. Ask questions. If you don't understand anything, please ask. We're here to help, because at the end of the 4 weekends, what we want you to have is a mind that has been stretched and is opened and can now really embrace the power that you have within your hands and your body to heal the body. And you will have more than enough tools and techniques to be able to help every single patient that walks into your door, and that is absolutely powerful. So originally, applied kinesiology was first developed in 1964 by George Goodhart. He was a chiropractor in Detroit, Michigan. He practiced straight chiropractic. His father was a chiropractor, and so he took over the family business. And he started using muscle testing after reading a book by two authors, Kendall and Kendall. And they wrote a book on manual muscle testing for physiotherapists. And it was a way to evaluate polio dysfunction. So patients that suffered polio in the 50s and 40s, they used manual muscle testing to grade how badly their muscular dysfunction was. He was often referred to the man with the magic fingers. He had patients that would fly in and drive in to see him because he was sort of the guy that could fix everything. He noticed that sometimes muscles tested weak without any known neurological cause, and that bothered him, that there was no neurological reason for that muscle to be weak, and that is sort of what started the basis. And the first breakthrough came when he identified a weak serratus anterior muscle. And then, just due to the pain in the person's shoulder, he started rubbing on painful nodules on the serratus anterior, and then went back and tested that muscle. And surprise to him, the muscle actually came back on strong, or it was facilitated. And so there was a change in the strength. And what he later found was that this was the original technique, and it's called origin insertion technique. And this will be one of the techniques that you'll learn. But it was one of the founding techniques within applied kinesiology. It was such a simple technique, and it made such a huge difference for people, because you could actually turn back on the muscles, and then it brought them more into balance. So really, it started in 1964, so we're in 2014. So this year we're celebrating our 50th anniversary. There's a big celebration in June in Washington, D.C. at the ICAK USA annual general meeting, which is going to be in combination with the international meeting. So I know it's kind of late notice, but if you got any interest, flying out to Washington, D.C., you'll learn basically from all the best applied kinesiology teachers around today. In 1966, he created the Neurolymphatic technique. This was based after Chapman reflexes that were developed in the 1930s. In 1967, he brought forth Neurovascular technique, and this was again based on the Bennett reflexes developed by chiropractor Bennett in the 1930s. 1969, after reading Sutherland's work, he developed the basic cranial motion and cranial evaluation within applied kinesiology. 1974 was a big year, because this is where he introduced therapy localization. And this is one of the techniques that you'll be using every day, and is really a foundational technique within applied kinesiology. And just due to the large following by that time, so now we're talking 10 years later, a group of chiropractors decided to start the International College of Applied Kinesiology in 1975. And it's been around since then, and from 1975 there's been different chapters that have opened up throughout the world. In 1976, he brought forward the concept of temporomandibular joint corrections and the importance of making sure that that whole temporomandibular joint be evaluated and corrected, because it was a foundation of body being in function. And then what happened is that a chiropractor in Colorado, Pueblo, Colorado, David Walther, took everything that George had written from 64, and he created the first textbook. This is called the Applied Kinesiology. A synopsis. We'll be referring to this book throughout the course. And it's basically the Applied Kinesiology Bible. This is where all the techniques that we know of today and have been accepted as teaching aids are written in. So this will sort of become our textbook. Every year, new findings are discovered within applied kinesiology, and this really is part of the ICAK USA. So this is the largest chapter, and this is what they do every year is they publish every year research papers that are submitted in February from different applied kinesiologists, and every year we create and publish a research Bible that sort of just keeps up to date and introduces new concepts and techniques. So the first real question that a lot of people ask is, what's a reason for a muscle to dysfunction? Why would it not respond properly? And it can be related to a lot of things. Just simply the muscle itself, myofascial, a nerve can be pinched. A spinal segment can be causing deafferentation at that level. You can have neurological disorganization, so the brain is confused and giving opposite results. Certain low nutrients can create a dysfunctional muscle. Toxic chemicals, the Crainio Sacral complex can create weak muscles. You can have meridian imbalances within the acupuncture system, and you can have lymphatic or vascular blockage resulting in a reason for a muscle to dysfunction. And you can have just overall organ dysfunction. And so this relates and forms the basis of applied kinesiology, is that the five biggest reasons why a muscle is weak, and we call this the 5 factors of the intervertebral foramen. So the first one is craniosacral problems. Acupuncture and meridian involvement is the second one. Nerve involvement is the third one. Neurolymphatic problems is the fourth, and neurovascular is the fifth. And this all forms the basis of the Triad of Health. And so our goal as applied kinesiology is to balance the triangle. And so at the bottom is structural. This becomes the most important part of it. So you need to balance structure first. Then you need to look at the biochemical side, or the orthomolecular side of the triangle, and then the mental side. And so all three of these, when in balance, puts the body in balance. And the body is really out of balance basically from one of these three things. So structural problems, what can that be? That can be subluxations within the spinal column, subluxations within the joints, cranial subluxations, organ subluxations, so just organs that are malpositioned, and the osteopaths do this phenomenally well. You can have problems within the TMJ structure itself, and then pelvic instability. All can create structural problems which will result in dysfunctional muscle patterns. Nutritional problems would include things like allergies, chronic fungal bacteria or parasite infections, metal toxicity, chemical toxicity, prostaglandin problems, so imbalances in mega fats, and then digestive disturbances would be another big one. And you'll learn how to evaluate for this and treat this within the next 4 seminars. And so the last part, and certainly not the least, the mental side, depression, phobias, psychological sabotage, learning issues, these can all create stress on the brain and the mental side and put the body out of balance, and as a result you have dysfunctional muscle patterns. So why manual muscle testing? Well, the reason is because we have, actually I should correct that, it's not 500 plus muscles, we have 700, more than 700 muscles in the body. So muscles really drive our body's function. And the reality is that muscles move the bones, and our structural function is dependent on the muscular system being reactive and in balance and being able to respond to external force. And this is really the primary thing, is that our body's ability to respond to an external stimuli is what keeps us healthy, and its inability to respond to that stimuli makes us sick. And so now we're going to talk about the 5 factors of the intervertebral foramen. We'll go through them one by one and give you more examples. I just want to make a note here that probably a 6 one is certainly nowadays is EMF, or electrical magnetic field disturbances within our society, cell phones, wires, all that sort of stuff, Bluetooth as an example. So neurological, these are just simply subluxations or fixations within the spinal column. This is sort of forms the basis of the structural problems, and this is what chiropractors and osteopaths have been doing very successfully for years, is that when the spine is in line, you feel fine. And it's really important to evaluate for that structural dysfunction. And so if you aren't a chiropractor or an osteopath, now will teach you a way to evaluate for that so that you know and are able to refer to the appropriate person and get that fixed. Neurolymphatic points being number 2. These points were developed by Frank Chapman. He was an osteopath in the 1930s. He used this to help him drain the lymphatic areas that were related to certain organs. You'll find these points both on the anterior front and posterior backside of the body, and they're stimulated by rubbing, so just firm rotary pressure of about 30 seconds over the body. And just as a side note there, I take no responsibility for spelling mistakes. So that should have said of instead of faux. So you want to rotary pressure for 30 seconds on those points will help stimulate lymphatic drainage back to that organ and the related muscle. Goodhart used them first in 1966. By stimulating the point, he found that he could make a weak muscle strong. These neurolymphatic points were one of the keys that helped him further develop the organ-muscle relationships, which will teach you that certain muscles have relationships with different organs, and you can use these muscle relationships to find out where the organs are in dysfunction. And that organ and muscle drainage of the lymph occurs with stimulation of these points. They're active when you feel a swelling over the area and are usually painful to rub. The anterior points are usually worse than the posterior points in general, not all the times, but you'll find that they're a lot more painful. And the more painful the point, the greater chance it is a nutritional issue. So if somebody's really moving in pain and you have a little bit of pressure over there, it's probably an indication that you need to check for nutritional support. And the supplement that reduces the pain is the most likely way to be needed. So one of the things that George Goodhart always said is measure, measure, measure. Never use just manual muscle testing to evaluate the body. So this would be another way to evaluate, and besides manual muscle testing, you can do range of motion, but this too, if you're wondering about a supplement, and by putting the supplement on the tongue, it reduces the pain in that neurolymphatic area, then you've got another indication that that person needs that supplement. Neurovascular points are the third section. These are points only found on the head for the most part. There's a couple points that are found on the body, but most of them are found on the head. And they were developed by Terence Bennett, a chiropractor back in the 1930s. He mainly found that they were on the skull, and stimulation of these points increases blood flow to that related organ and muscle. They are thought to be remnants of the vascular network, which augments the mother's placental circulation before the heart is formed at about the 4th month in gestation. They can be stimulated by a light pull or tug and feeling for a pulse over like a 20-second period. And he started using them in 1967 after reading Bennett's book. And just like the neurolymphatic points, he used the neurovascular points to help him just further define and detail out the muscle-organ relationships. And again, the main reason for this is the embryological relationships, or the unfolding of the muscles and skin tissue in the head with the organs at the time prior to the heart formation at the 4th month. And you can use these points as a way to therapy localize or identify problems. We'll learn more about that later here. The acupuncture system, so this is over 5,000 years old. It's the oldest form of medicine there is, basically. It's based on the premise that man is a microcosm of the universe, and that the same life-giving energy connects us to our environment. They call this energy chi. It flows throughout the body in distinct pathways called meridians. It's the oldest known medical reference text. It's called the Nai Chin. It was written between 2696 and 2598 before Christ. In applied kinesiology, within the acupuncture system, we'll refer to and discuss 12 different meridian systems. We'll discuss concepts of the 24-hour clock. We'll be using sedation points to help us identify whether a muscle is in good function or not. We use tonification points within the acupuncture system, alarm points, to identify where problems lie, as well as using them as treatment points. And then we'll use the acupuncture 5-element chart to help us develop a treatment plan within the acupuncture system. And then the last part here, the Crainio Sacral system. So this is basically everything to do with the skull and the sacrum and the tissue that lies around the nervous system within the spinal cord. This was first, this cerebral spinal fluid, cranial motion, was first developed by William Sutherland, an English osteopath, who introduced the idea of cranial bones moving, and these imbalances can alter function of any muscle or organ. And usually we address these issues through respiratory challenges and treatments. And the treatment itself is done through direct pressure using breathing in and breathing out. What ties all this together is the potential need for nutrition. So George Goodhart got most of his information about nutrition through Royal Lee, who was a dentist and started a company in Wisconsin called Standard Process in 1937. And this was a whole food nutrition company, so it grew its own vegetables and it has its own gardens still to this day, and then dries and concentrates those vegetables into different supplements. And what Goodhart found was that by tasting some of these nutrients, he could see changes in cardiographic recordings of the heart rhythm and muscular function, and started then using muscle testing as a way to confirm or deny that. In 1968, there was an article in Science magazine that determined its direct nutritional pathway to the brain. So placing a supplement on the tongue and then feeling for a change in the muscle strength is no joke. There's a scientific reason for this, and it works extremely, extremely well. And then what he found was in 1968 that in salivating, these nutrients changed the muscle immediately. So the example here is by placing Standard Process thyroid supplement on the tongue, immediately facilitated teres minor, and was a third way for that George Goodhart made the relationships between the muscle and the organ. So in this case, the teres minor muscle is related to thyroid function. And in applied kinesiology, we use really three things daily. One is the manual muscle test. The other one is therapy localization. And the other one is called challenge. Therapy localization was discovered in 1974. It's found by, this inhibition is found by placing the patient's hand over an area of dysfunction. Muscular facilitation is only located by placing the patient's hand over an area of dysfunction related specifically to that inhibited muscle being tested. So we have a weak teres minor, and we place the patient's fingers over the thyroid, and that teres minor becomes strong. This is what we would call to therapy localization. It reveals where the problem is, but not what the problem is. So it's a way to just a little bit closer to get us to what we need to do. It does not replace standardized examination procedures, and it can cause a muscle to weaken or a weak muscle to strengthen. Challenge is a way that we use, so we use an external vector of force in a direction that causes change in muscle facilitation. So you can move the vertebra or the organs in different directions and look to see if a muscle becomes strong or a strong muscle becomes weak. And what's happening here is we're affecting joints and muscle mechanoreceptors and also organ mechanoreceptors within the organ. It creates an intense deafferentation from improper joint mechanics, which affects the central nervous system and the anterior motor neurons, and as a result changes the muscle. The challenge disrupts central integrative state and temporarily causes a neurological inhibition of any normally functioning muscle. So you can challenge a vertebra, a joint, or an organ, and a weak muscle will become strong, or a strong muscle will become weak, and that would be an indication that there's something going on there. Nutrition, the science of nutrition is really simple. We have gustatory receptors on the tongue, which then are integrated with the cranial nerves, which then get ascended to the nucleus of the tractus solitarius in the brain, which then further stimulates the thalamus, and then from there the thalamus stimulates the cortex, and the taste sensation part of the cortex. And as a result, there's a response from the hypothalamus through the reticular formation and the reticulospinal tract through the anterior motor neurons of the spinal cord and the alpha motor neurons, which then cause a change in muscle function. So this is a direct neurological connection. So simply place nutrition in the mouth on the tongue. There is activation through to the thalamus and the brain responds by sending information back through the hypothalamus to the spinal cord, causing a change in muscle strength. So the muscle testing, manual muscle testing itself, it's an art. So it's traditionally used to evaluate disability or degree of motor loss in polio. This is what Kendall used to write about. And then George Goodhart sort of took that and broadened it a little bit. And so we use manual muscle testing as a measure of the excitation level of the neuromuscular junction as an indication of motor neuron activity at the corresponding anterior motor neuron cell. So this is a neurological effect. We're looking at this activity within the motor neuron, within the muscle and the spinal cord. We are testing for function, not strength. This is really important. When you're testing, we're looking for function of the muscle and not how strong it is. Here's some sort of what we consider the 10 most important things. When you're testing the muscle, you need to approximate or bring the muscle closer together, so approximating the origin insertion when you want to test. You want to avoid contacting the body unnecessarily, and so we'll show you different points you can contact so that you can stabilize, because you need adequate stabilization of the patient in order to test properly. You need to instruct the patient in which direction to push or pull, and you do not ever overpower the patient. The patient initiates contraction with your test and then steadily increase your pressure for 3 seconds. You are measuring the ability of the muscle to lock. This is really, really important, and we'll show you and demonstrate this for you. There'll also be some videos down below underneath this video, which will be examples so you can watch and see what I mean. And you want to be aware of operator prejudice. This is really important, that you really get and put the muscle in the proper origin, insertion, direction, and you test from there. You want to observe and make sure that the patient is not trying to change the parameters by cheating, and things like observing the patient holding their breath. You want to keep the patient's hands off the body, because if they're on the body, you're creating this therapy localization, and that can create change within the muscle test. And you want to coordinate the timing so that the doctor initiates test after the patient. This is really important, that the patient first initiates the movement, then the doctor responds. And so we have 3 different ways a muscle can respond. It can respond strong or normal tonic. This is basically a facilitated muscle. And what's true here is that the muscle will weaken with stimulation of the sedation point in the acupuncture system. So sedating the muscle will turn it off. And the muscle will also weaken when you spindle down this muscle. So this is normal. This is what should happen. So then a muscle tests weak, or what's we call hyporeactive, or defacilitated, or inhibited. There is no locking of the muscle, and it is easy to push through the full range of motion. The third option that we can have is that the muscle tests too strong. It's hyperreactive, or it's over-facilitated. So spindling down the muscle stays strong, or tapping the sedation point within the muscle acupuncture system does not weaken the muscle. It just stays strong. This is hyperreactive. And through that, we can use the manual muscle testing and therapy localization to evaluate problems. We can challenge to look for problems. We can look at the neurological relationships within the vertebrae and joints. We can use the neurolymphatics and neurovascular points to identify what changes muscle inhibition, facilitation. We can look at the acupuncture points to see changes. And then again, organ relationships, Crainio Sacral system relationships, and nutritional relationships. All these things we can use the manual muscle test to look for change. Does a facilitated muscle become inhibited, or does an inhibited muscle become facilitated when we do one of these things? So I'll just continue recording, because I just want to put in a little sort of further plug here. Down below these videos, you'll see a couple other videos that we've put in there. These are from other applied kinesiologists that we think have sort of also discussed applied kinesiology in a really interesting way, and it also gives you some examples of what we mean by manual muscle testing, so that now when you come to the first seminar, you have a basic understanding of what we're going to do, and you can get right into starting right from day one on showing you what muscles we're going to test and what different techniques we're going to use to evaluate for the body. So again, I thank you for taking the time to listen to this, watching this. I hope you found it interesting. This is sort of basically the boring stuff of applied kinesiology, and I promise you, come the first seminar, it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to do a lot of hands-on work, and you'll really be able to understand and use this stuff on Monday morning. It's going to change your life. It's changed ours, and we are so glad that you have decided to join us on this journey, and we are really looking forward to it. Thank you very much.